It's no secret that I like to talk about polling on this channel. But what's so funny to me is that usually nobody demands that I cover a poll, but this week I've been getting multiple demands to talk yet again about the EKOS poll that Frank Graves released that supposedly shows that the Liberals have nearly caught up with the federal Conservatives. This is complete nonsense, and I think that Frank Graves and EKOS are basically just trying to rig public opinion. They're simply wanting to show you a poll like this, showing the Liberals within 3 points of the Conservatives, to generate the idea that maybe the Liberals are back. Maybe the Liberals have cleaned up their act and they deserve a second chance. Polls like this, to be very clear, are not actually going to change public opinion. It's not like if Canadians see enough polls like this, they're going to vote Liberal. The vast majority of Canadians hate the Liberals. I cannot put enough of an emphasis on the word hate when I say that Canadians hate the Liberals. Look at any government approval ratings from many of the other pollsters. Aside from Trudeau, who has like approval ratings equivalent to the bubonic plague, the government itself has equally bad polling numbers. Maybe Trudeau moving on will increase them. Okay, but you will have to increase them by 10 to 20 points to actually be in the next federal election as a real player. Any of the other pollsters, even with a Liberal bump, and I do believe the Liberals will get a bump from Trudeau moving on, will still not be in anywhere close to actually winning enough seats. But look at this poll. This is insane. Frank Graves should be locked up for his own good because the man has been taking too many crazy pills and now his brain is clown soup. 36% conservative, 33% liberal, NDP 13, Bloc 7, Green Party 5, PPC 5, and even other still gets 2. And he has the audacity to say that his margin of error is 2.6%. So these are the exact results he expects to happen in a real election, plus or minus 2.6%, guys. That is so insane. And the thing is that Frank Graves knows he's just manipulating public opinion, because if he had the metal to actually do it, he would have lowered the Liberals. He would have lowered the Conservatives below the Liberals and had the Liberals leading. But he's been mostly just taking from the NDP and giving it to the Liberals because even he knows that it makes no sense that the Conservatives are even losing as much support as they have currently. So to boost the Liberals, he has to take votes away from the NDP. The problem with that is the NDP is a cult. The NDP owns its 15% at least. It maybe gains 2 or 3 to maybe 5 or 6 points per election, but most of the time the NDP's floor is 15%. You would have to work pretty hard to move the federal NDP below 15%. But Frank Graves has pushed them that low just to make it look like Mark Carney or Chrystia Freeland and the Liberals have a chance. It's not going to work. I want to show you some of this stuff right now before I compare it directly to other polls. This is Frank Graves' polling trajectory right now. Look at this. Look at it. This is insane. Back in December, by the way, he gave the Conservatives a 25% lead over the Liberals. And this isn't, and someone might then try and say, well, Wyatt, you liked it when he put them 25 points up, but you don't like it when he only has the Liberals 3% down? No. I just have a problem with EKOS in general. Even when I saw them give the Liberals or the Conservatives a 25% lead, even in the back of my head, I kind of laughed at that somehow Frank Graves was even in the ballpark of what other pollsters were like. I just thought it was a fluke. But I guarantee you, when Frank Graves said that the Conservatives were ahead 25 points, it was because he was trying to help shove Trudeau out of the Prime Minister's office to install Carney or Freeland. Everything Frank Graves has done over the past 2 years has been motivated by political ends, not simply a pollster trying to be accurate. And this is why he's motivated. This is a tweet. He deleted it in 2022 in March. He said, a real conservative option is a healthy counterbalance and a healthy democracy. Pierre Poilievre is an acolyte of authoritarian populism. This is never healthy. You are on notice, going to make sure you are never going to lead my country. I don't make idle threats. And it kind of does seem like an idle threat when you delete it, but it seems like he has at least stayed true to his commitment that he's going to try and keep Pierre Poilievre out of office. Because this polling trend, it goes up for the Conservatives when he's trying to agitate against Trudeau. That other hump you see there is back in October or earlier in the year when there were initial calls for Trudeau to step down. So when Frank Graves needs Trudeau to step down, Conservative polling goes up. When Trudeau starts stabilizing, it comes back down. And when there's a renewed push to get him out of office, then he spikes it again to give the incentive to Freeland and others to tell Trudeau to go take a dirt nap. And now that he needs a narrative to say that the Liberals are actually making a comeback because of all the energy, all that raw energy that they're generating from their leadership race, he then starts to show that the two parties are catching up. It makes no sense. And now I have to show you his polling tables. They make even less sense than this. This is his data tables for the IVR, which is actually a little bit friendlier to the Conservatives than the online poll. This is going to make literally no sense to you. Protect your brains, folks. This is going to hurt your face. Before I get to it, guys, remember to like the video, subscribe to the channel, leave a comment, do all that great stuff. I am suffering for you all by reading Frank Graves' polls. And this pollster is still respected. All the polling trend, the other than Charest and Polywave, 338 Canada, all the other polling projectors and modelers on social media or who have their own websites are still carrying EKOS and pretending like they're legitimate and not just removing their weighting to basically say, yeah, I guess they released a poll, but we don't put anything into it. Look at this, guys. This is the thing that matters the most. The People's Party of Canada. We have seen the People's Party of Canada in ridings where they got 5.6% last election, places like Cloverdale, Langley City, when there is a by-election where it in fact should be easier for a small party to gain a larger percentage of the vote, because in theory your hardcore base is going to show up, and then you're going to get, instead of 5%, you're going to get 9%, simply because the same like 1,200 people show up for you in the by-election, or 800 people, where the other party's votes are like half, so your vote actually goes up. The People's Party in places like Cloverdale, Langley City, where they got 5.6%, only got 0.9% in by-elections. The People's Party is basically dead. But in this Frank Graves fever dream poll, look at this. In Manitoba, the People's Party had 15.8%. In Atlantic Canada, they had 8.9%. Ontario, they had 5.2%. But oddly enough, in Alberta, they only had 3.1%. In Saskatchewan, they had 3.4%. And in BC and the territories, they had 1.3%. That makes no sense. If you understand the People's Party, their strength in terms of raw popular vote is in, I would agree, Manitoba, but not 15.8% Manitoba. But it's in Alberta, Saskatchewan, and Manitoba. Nowhere was there a riding in Atlantic Canada that I believe they got more than 10% in the last election. But multiple ridings in the prairies, they actually did score above 10% in very rural ridings like Portage-Lisgar, where Maxime Bernier ran in that by-election, but he also lost votes compared to 2021 because it's not a competently run party. The Green Party, in this poll, Green Party got 5% in Atlantic Canada, 5.2% in Quebec, 5.5% in Ontario, and like 5.1% in BC and the territories. That one makes sense because Elizabeth May has a riding there, but no, that's just unrealistic for them. They are scoring 8.5% with people under the age of 35. This is just clown world. This is not a real election at all. This is not an actual thing that people recognize. And you can tell what Frank Graves is doing here because he's weighted university-educated people as being an extremely high portion of the electorate. And then he doesn't correct for the fact that in many of these provinces where he has really wacky results, just completely wild, out of left field results, like his previous poll, was even weirder. It seems like he's correcting to make this poll seem more legitimate, even as the actual overall top line results get more insane. Because as he gets the Liberals coming closer to the Conservatives, that is so unrealistic. But to make it seem realistic, he's corrected from his last poll where the Greens were at 18% in Atlantic Canada in his subcharts before he had cooked the numbers to look good on the national side. This is just a ploy to try and get Liberal donors to give money to the party so that Liberal people can go to their donor networks and say, hey guys, we're within 3% now because Carney's running. Carney has no chance of winning at all. Now I'm going to show you just how off these polls are, because it's not just my opinion. It's not just conjecture. It actively doesn't make any sense. So look at this. This is 338's kind of bullseye chart, where this is rating polls on how much more they poll the Liberals or Conservatives up or down below what the 338 average is. So that Canadian Maple Leaf right in the middle, that is the 338 average, and all these gray dots are past polls and where they've been. So on the right, you see Liberal Party higher than 338 average, and on the left, it's the Liberal Party polling lower than the 338 average. Above is the Conservative Party polling more than the 338 average currently has them, and then, of course, if you go south, it is the Conservative Party polling lower than the 338 average previously was. And a bunch of new polls show things shifting a little bit in favor of the Liberals and a little bit away from the Conservatives. Makes sense. The Liberals were at 20% in many of the previous polls. They had only room to improve. They were basically at rock bottom, and as soon as Trudeau stepped down, it was predictable that they were going to bounce back a bit. I do not contend with that. And then you have a couple other polls, Ipsos Research Co., Angus Reid, that show the Liberal Party still falling down since Trudeau stepped down, or the Liberal parties have stabilized a bit, but the Conservatives are continuing to increase. Do you want to see where, and this is, Abacus, Leger, Nanos, Palace, Main Street, they all show the Liberals improving a bit as time goes on by a few percent. They're at mid-20s right now. Do you want to see where EKOS is? I've heard people say that because these pollsters show the Liberals increasing a bit, it confirms the trend EKOS is on. EKOS is not even on the chart. This is where EKOS is, because they're not credible. This is not, as I've said in previous videos, this is not how public opinion works. EKOS cannot take a reading of Canadians on December 18th showing the Conservatives leading by 25%. That, by the way, was before, I believe, or basically right after Chrystia Freeland had resigned from her post, but before there was a lot of momentum to kick Trudeau out of office. 25% Conservative lead. Jump ahead to January 27th. Only a little bit more than a month later. Now the Liberals are within 3 points. I believe in polling trends when they're motivated. When I say motivated, I don't mean well-motivated or not well-motivated. I'm talking about a different type of motivation, in the sense that if the Conservative polling went down significantly, like EKOS is showing, but the Conservatives had a massive scandal hit, I could kind of believe it. The Liberals bounce back a bit, like in some of the other pollsters, because Trudeau steps down. That's believable. I absolutely understand that. And if the Liberals bounce back, some of their gain is going to come from the Conservatives. So I can see the Liberals gaining a bit and the Conservatives losing a bit. Perfectly normal polling trend. But when I see the Liberals shoot up and the Conservatives shoot down, I don't believe you, because there's nothing in the current Canadian news cycle that would motivate the voting public to move their opinions around like that. The Liberals right now are playing with about 6% of Canadians willing to jump back and forth between the Conservatives and Liberals, or NDP and Liberals, based on who the leader is. That still puts them in like death territory, where they're only going to win 60 seats. They're dead in the water at any of the other pollsters' bounds. Let me show you something else. This is absolutely insane. Do you know that this poll, as Polling Canada shows on Twitter, this poll would give the PPC 4 seats in Manitoba. It's almost like having a sample size of only 40 people is extremely stupid. If you have if you do a national poll and you have a sample size of 500, that could work. But if your regionals don't even make sense because you had extreme outliers answering your poll, you need a bigger sample size. This is the thing. When your results don't make sense to physical reality, to people that you know, to normal people in the real world, either you need to reweight your results because to be more in line with what other pollsters have been showing, or you need to go back to the field and go survey more people. Frank Graves doesn't want to do that because he needs to show a positive trend for the Liberals. What would motivate a man to do such a thing? Well, I don't know. Maybe his company is being given hundreds of thousands of dollars from the federal government. Look, contract date November 25th, 2024 for EKOS Research Associates, $154,000. December 11th, 2024, he is given $207,000. Thousand smackaroonies. But of course, Frank Graves, the man who issued this tweet saying he doesn't make idle threats and he doesn't want Polyev ever leading his country, he has too much integrity to rig a poll or to at least not check if his results are obvious outliers and that he needs better data. The problem is that he does some IVR polling, which is someone picks up a phone, they hear a robotic voice say, "Who do you want to vote for?" And it's like a bunch of options, and then you hit the number for the option that you want. The problem is that if he gets a wonky IVR result, or he doesn't care if all of the numbers are coming from metropolitan areas, then he can pretend that it's a normal poll result, even though he mostly targeted only cities for the phones, like for the phone calls. And then with online polls, he can just not care that he has hyper partisans in the polling sample, and that is leaning heavily towards the Greens and the PPC disproportionately. And that throws off the conservative vote because a lot of conservatives, are casual voters. They're not hardcores. But the problem is online polls self-select for the couple percentage of people in every party that are hardcores. And Frank Graves doesn't want to actually do anything about that because, again, it helps the Liberals not to do anything about it. And again, what I think this is one, trying to create a bandwagon effect that people are going to start voting Liberal again because it looks like other people are. That's the least likely to work because that's not how public opinion works. People don't see a poll and then decide they're going to vote like other people. It has a little bit of an effect around the margins, but not much. The main two other things, number 2 and 3, the other two motivations I think there is going on here, is he wants Liberal donors to open their wallets up and to give more money to the Liberals because now the Liberals can show that they're catching the Conservatives. Or he also wants more votes to go towards the PPC because, look, they can win seats now. And more PPC people are going to give the PPC money, even though the party does not do any work to make it so that people actually vote for them. But they can be disruptive, not because they've legitimately done the work and become a substantial force in politics, but simply because Frank Graves has said so, and it allows the PPC to also propagandize its own voters to vote for them. This is absolutely insane. The Conservatives and the NDP should almost think about teaming up and suing Frank Graves, because I guarantee Frank Graves, if you got him to actually testify, could not actually stand by the integrity of the polls and say that these are legitimate results that he would stand by in any other election. Because he, in the past, as he has stated, and he's somewhat right, has had far more realistic results in other elections. But in this one, suddenly everything's completely cattywampus, and, oh, well, you just don't like it because your party's down. Easy for you to say when you're the guy who hates Polyev and you seem to be motivated to make him look bad, unless you also need Trudeau out of office because you don't think he can win, and you're willing to dump a bunch of bad polls out. This is exactly like when Joe Biden had his terrible debate performance against Donald Trump, and then his internal party people started leaking every conveniently bad poll that they had internally for Biden to try and shame him out to then install Kamala Harris. This is the installing Kamala Harris moment. Frank Graves makes him look really bad by spiking the Conservatives in mid-December. And now that Kamala Harris, Mark Carney, or Chrystia Freeland are coming in as leader, now he needs to show that they're actually increasing and they're doing super well and everyone loves them and they're so brat and all this stuff. No, nobody likes them either. Look at any poll that Abacus Data has done on government approval or any other of the pollsters have done on government approval. It's in the low 20s at best. It's terrible because people understand Trudeau is the main problem in the Liberal government, but it's just because he's the prime minister. The prime minister is always going to be the main problem. But the main problem as to why you get a figure like Trudeau leading that party and causing all the problems is the Liberal Party brass who approves of people like Trudeau being in those positions of power. It's insane. Anyways, that should be it for me today, guys. I hope you don't mind me staring at little pieces of data on screen like this and talking about very minute polling details. EKOS is just a terrible pollster. Nobody should trust them, and more people need to be aware that they're not real. So if you ever have a family member or a friend talk about the Liberals coming back and the Polliev and the Conservatives are scared, don't say, oh, everyone hates the Liberals. They suck. How could you vote Liberal? Just give them information on what EKOS is all about, how much Frank Graves hates Polliev, and how do you really think that the Greens were 18% at one point in Atlantic Canada? Do you really think that Manitoba is a 16% PPC province, despite the fact Winnipeg exists? They will not be able to defend this, and they will clownish if they do. It's wild looking at all of the Liberal influencers online who display themselves as experts. I'm a doctor. I have a PhD, and they'll believe EKOS polling. No, having an education doesn't mean you're smart. It just means that you're usually able to make stuff up better than other people because most of these people have PhDs in nonsense. Anyways, so that's it for me today, guys. Like this video, subscribe to the channel, leave a comment, do all that other great stuff. Go follow my Telegram. I actually have the Telegram channel linked in the pinned comment below if you guys want to go down to the socials. Follow me on X, follow the Facebook page, do all that great stuff.